Morning, everybody. Very nice to see everybody on this Erudition morning. Erudition is a red tea. It comes from Anhui Province, from the Chimun area of Anhui Province. We all remember from previous discussions that that area is in southern Anhui, and it abuts the Yellow Mountains. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. And we're going to talk about some details related to tea business, and that's tea business from the Chinese perspective, and give you a little bit more insight of how villagers are trying to, and how village governments are trying to deal with the ups and downs of tea business. So this should be a great session today. Tea is very, very good. Let's go ahead and dig right in. So red tea. As a reminder, in the West, we use the term black tea. In China, they use red tea. We follow that term. So red here is indicative of a process of making the tea. And that process is highly oxidative. In other words, you go through lots of oxidation to achieve the end result. Erudition belongs to a class of red teas that are produced in Chimun area. So it's all part of what they call the Chimun red family. Does this mean that all the plants are the same and the process maybe is a little different? No, it's every varietal is different. The micro terroirs are different, and so you end up with different flavors. The process, though, by and large, at the top levels, is very much the same. And certainly the basic process is 100% the same. You pick the tea leaves, you bring them in, you get moisture out of them in some way. And usually that way is either to wither outside or to wither on a machine that's forcing air through holes in the machine. There's a compressor at the end. The leaves are bouncing up and down. Those are the two main ways to reduce the moisture. So how much are we going to reduce the moisture? We're going to reduce it to down around 60% left in the tea leaf. Now, is that a precise measure? In big factories, they do have a precise measure. And we need to talk about this in more detail because big factories are also affecting farmers. So at the big factories, they have all these ISO standards, and they have real numbers and real machinery. And in general, China, as it gets bigger in terms of the factories, tends to be not only more mechanized and less handcrafted, but also for standardization and for stability, things are put out there with numbers that we would recognize in the West. Is this yet the majority of tea that's being processed? No, but there's an increasing amount that's falling with the big producers. So let's think in general, whether you're making tea or you're doing ceramics or you're doing some other venture that has an artistic side to it and has a mechanized side to it. So what are the choices in terms of which place you're going to be actually involved with? In other words, as a farmer, are you going to choose? What would be the reasons for you to choose mechanization If you're going to choose handcrafted, what are the reasons for that? For mechanization, you get your money faster, right? You grow, you pick, and then you deliver to the factory, and you're all done. You get paid. So the flow of money is faster. That's one thing. The second thing is, what about area? In other words, how much space do you need? Well, you need enough space to get the crop in and get it packed, but that's it. You don't need space to store. You don't need space for machinery, so there's less cost. So what's the downside again? I like less cost. I like fewer pieces of machinery I have to worry about. That sounds like a good thing. Except for the fact that the price you get for what you pick, and by the way, the price is determined on what you're offering up as a pick. Is it one bud and one leaf, one bud and two leaves, or some other pick? So all of these things play into the price equation. And what time of the year are you picking? Are you picking at the ideal time from the Chiman area between April 5th and April 15th? Are you picking a little earlier because you're in a micro terroir where that's possible? Or are you picking later? All of these things will affect price. But the one thing you know for certain is when you deal with the agent from the factory, they'll look, they'll evaluate, and they'll give you a price, one standard price for what it is that you're offering up. Can you negotiate that price? That's an interesting thing. In China, if you're a huge farmer, yeah, you have some room for negotiation. If you're a smaller farmer, no, there's not much negotiating room. Maybe a tiny bit, but not much. So that's on one side. You get your money early, less expense. The negative is you don't really set the price. You receive the price and then accept what you're given. So for the handicraft, you're looking across the aisle, wow, they get their money early. However, how much money are they getting? Are they getting maybe a tenth of what you would get because you process everything yourself? And if you're a real good processor and really skilled, maybe you're making 20 times what your neighbor is making. You got to have the space. You got to have the equipment. You got to hire the people. And by the way, this hiring issue isn't an insubstantial issue, because in China, in the countryside, of which 36% of the population still lives, and we're talking about 600 million people. Well, it sounds like we could get workers. That's twice the population of the United States. Yeah, we ought to be okay with getting workers. Now let me think about that a minute. Oh yeah, this is a little bit like the Starbucks versus French Laundry. Let's think about that for a minute. Starbucks, I'm going to give you whatever their wages these days, and I'm going to train you, and all you have to do is bring yourself clean and presentable, and we're going to get you working from day one. And by the way, we're not going to have you do anything complicated. We're going to have you follow 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to have you follow these steps. Just do that. We don't want creativity. That's it. French Laundry. You're going to be one of the workers there. Now, you know what? They got standards. How you hold yourself. How you talk to people. What you're supposed to say. What you're not supposed to say. how you fulfill a French Laundry experience. Oh, by the way, any of those of you who are on the broadcast who've never heard of French Laundry, I apologize. French Laundry is the premier restaurant in Yountville, which is in Napa County. And it's one of the best rated as one of the best restaurants in the world. So that's why I'm making the comparison. So craft, and they grow their own food by and large, versus mass produced. And employees for that. You can't get run-of-the-mill employees to work at craft places, whether it's French Laundry or picking for a craft result for your farm. You gotta get the employees who have experience, who have productivity, and attention to detail. Craft is all about attention to detail. Whether it's tea or ceramics or French Laundry, it's attention to detail. So instead of this big pool that I just mentioned, 600 million, you don't have a big pool. And by the way, what's really interesting is what's happening to the entrance into this pool. Is there a steady entrance as people get to the age of wanting to enter or being qualified to enter? The answer is no. In China, remember, they are leaving the farms as fast as they can get a job in urban areas. So this is a problem already in some places in China in terms of pickers, because you have to pick the right way. If you don't pick the wrong way, boink, as a craft producer, automatically you're in trouble. Hey, I said one bud and one leaf. Look at all of this. This is one bud and 4 leaves. Oh, I was just trying to increase your yield. Wrong answer. And that's a problem. So this is what the craft producer is going to increasingly face. And that can be a challenge. So these are the 2 ways that the rural movement or the rural farmer, 2, not ways, but 2, well, actually ways of thinking that the rural, the decision point that the rural farmer has to make. Do I want to continue to do like my grandfather and his father and his father? Or do I just want my money? And I don't have to worry about all these prosaic things like good workers. So that's going to increasingly become an issue. So what else are the factories doing? Because remember, out of this whole, it's a circle, isn't it? So who's in this circle? In the circle, you got scientists, you got farmers, you got producers. Hey, and you're in the circle, you got consumers. Out of the circle, but influencing the circle, you've got government, which tries to make rules. Now that influences the circle sometimes. Sometimes the circle pushes back. So you have all of these elements that play with the farmer, including you. Because as a consumer, if you say, in essence, to the marketplace, hey, I don't want to pay a dime an ounce for tea, and I'm only going to buy tea bag tea. That's one sort of decision. And farmers, over time, will be affected by that decision. Now, you and I here, we're not even a drop in the bucket. So the result is we play at a different level. We play at the most experienced and the most premium level. And that level, just like with any other craft of anything, has a limited market, doesn't it? It's not the dime an ounce, but it's the prevailing price for craft work, whatever it is. if you're a really, really good craftsman and have attention to detail, you can make good money. Because China, which is the bucket, and as I said, we're barely a drop in the bucket, they're the ones that drive that market. There is a substantial part of the tea drinking population that wants that craft tea, period. Because they've had the craft stuff, they've had the Midland stuff, and then they've had the bad stuff. And you know what? They don't do bad, period. They try and avoid Midland, and they stick just essentially as we do with the really, really good stuff. And so the farmers, what are they competing for? They're competing for this part of the market. By the way, in the US, this part of the market is growing dramatically. It's still growing 20% year over year. So that's a big growth, because as people discover, oh, wait a minute, I have choices. And they discover, oh, I can even taste the difference between these choices. And I want this one. So in the US, even as people are trying to, purveyors, I should say, not people, purveyors are trying to provide more craft tea. It's a hard market if you didn't make that decision in the beginning, because it's more and more limited in terms of Chinese teas. Where else in the world are they doing craft teas? There are always a few farms scattered, but how do you find them? How do you connect? Really difficult, really difficult. And even the big players in the tea business have a hard time building that bridge to connect at this level. All right, so that's what the farmer is thinking about. And I haven't described those first 5 steps. First step is picking, second is withering. I got you down to 60%. And if you're the craft, you're doing it by smell and feel. Next step is to actually bruise the leaves. And you want to bruise the leaves and then roll the leaves. Sometimes you do it at the same time so that you create the conditions for oxidation. You want to then go to oxidation, that's step 4. And then at the end, and it's not the end for craft producers, but next step, which would call it the 70% complete, would be to dry, because you got to stabilize the tea. So that in red tea, and you've heard me use this term before in relationship to raw black. Well, actually, they use this same term now with red teas out of Chima, because you have this factory choice versus a craft choice, and they call it Mao Chao, which I'd say is the 70% finished tea. And 70% relative to the levels that we're getting in here. Not 70% relative to what's going on in the market. Because if you dry and you're a big factory and you decide, oh, that's it, you can put that on market right away. So that's 100%. But if you're a big factory, so here is the strange combination that's going on in China. The big factory and the big factory owners, they can't get away from tradition. And they look at the marketplace in China and say, hey, there's still a significant part that want that highly crafted thing, including the leaders. So we got to keep the skill sets, we got to keep the equipment, and we got to do it. We have to charge for it, but we got to do it as another 12 steps at the conclusion of those first 5 steps. Yes.
Are there champions within Chinese government for holding on to the craft tea level? You've spoken before about how this is recognized, tea production is recognized, and not just production, but the processing and the craft nature of it, I think, as a part of the cultural heritage of the of the country, so there's been investment in the scientific support of new strains. But are there other sort of visible forms of governmental support or well-reputed, well-known tea-loving officials?
Great question. So this is a question about who are the champions of the tea industry, the craft portion of that tea industry. What would be their profile? What type of people are we talking about? So we're talking about some tea literati who really believe that, and they know the process. Many of the tea literati have farms themselves. They also have companies in many instances. And they know they want what they want to drink. And they know what their group of friends within the tea industry want to drink. So many of them are champions, not all. You have a portion of that tea literati who say, hey, I'll tell you what I'm interested in. I'm interested in making the big bucks. So one of the guys who owns a big company called Bama in southern China, this individual is more about the money, less about the craft, although he understands craft. And he has a very small line of crafted teas. When you talk to him, you realize, hey, it's about the dollars and cents. It's not about the craft. It's not about the art. Whereas we have another tea owner in central Hubei who's all about the craft, even though he provides, his is upside down. Excuse me. The majority of his tea is highly crafted, and then there's a percentage which goes to the other part of the market. Who else are champions? Well, you have officials who love their tea, and they love a certain flavor, and if they're not getting that flavor, they're not happy. So they tend to be champions. What about scientists? Mixed bag with scientists. Many of the traditional scientists, okay, I got to define traditional scientists. What does that mean? That means the older scientists. And so let's define older. Over 60. Many of those scientists who still have a direct connection in some way to craft, they want craft to continue. And they feel that the market will continue to support craft. And currently, they're really right. Where is the bottom feeding portion of the tea going? Let's see. Let me state that in another way, because that didn't sound very nice. Where is the least crafted tea going? Is it staying, especially red tea? Is it staying in China? The answer is no. Most of it, well, and this is a funny year to ask this question because the whole tea industry is kind of in flux right now. And this year there's been some trouble with exports, but in general, that's being exported to the Middle East, to Russia, to Africa, and it's the craft stuff and the Midland to craft stuff that's staying in China. So again, you have scientists, varying scientists who some are champions and some are not. The younger scientists tend to be a mixed bag. We deal with younger scientists who are truly champions, but we've seen younger scientists who don't care. And when I say they don't care, they're looking to make it more mechanized. And they don't call it that way, by the way. So let's use their language to make it more standardized. They're modern scientists. I want things standardized. And I want them standardized down to the last leaf. Those scientists. Okay, Tea Master is indicating to me that she was thirsty 10 minutes ago and that I've continued to talk. So I'll stop talking for a minute or two And then bring in the lovely tea master, 小北。
小北，你好，早上好，听不懂啊。Good morning, everyone。你好，早上好。我们做红茶 ，we do red tea。我们做红茶。Okay, so, John.
Yeah, this is her tableau. She has a tray so that water can splash all over the place and it doesn't matter. She has a holder of the tea leaves and she has kind of a scooper of the tea leaves. And it isn't scooping from something, it's actually directing the tea leaves and a strainer. All these tools, some of these tools are absolutely essential. 2 cups are absolutely essential, and a strainer is absolutely essential. Other things you should have, but you don't need to have. And the reason we have 3 cups is to dissipate everything faster. All right, so she's drawn 200-degree water. She's rinsing everything off to make sure that there's no soap residue or anything else that would affect the flavor. We're entering tea rhythm now, where we have a series of steps to get you ready to make the tea and enjoy this wonderful tea. Wants to make sure that the cups are heated. Oh yes, I forgot to mention that tea toy at the end of it. That tea toy is a piece of lava. We use it as a tea toy. You know, and I said that incorrectly, and all of you scientists are about to say something to the producer, which should point out to me, that's not lava, that's volcanic rock. You are exactly correct. And I read your minds instantly. The message came through loud and clear. That is volcanic rock, and you are right. All right, the tea master is drawing 175-degree water. This always looks like plain, doesn't it? And certainly for the young at heart, this is always fun. I love doing this stuff, except I get too much water all over the place. I'm not as accurate. What the tea master is really trying to do is to dissipate the steam. Why? Because when you brew this tea, you want a bright flavor. You don't want a flat flavor. So hotter, more steam creates a flat flavor. Lesser temperature, less steam, that creates a brighter temperature. Notice, not in a hurry, cup by cup, just going through this process, getting it to the right level of steam and right temperature. Pulling out the bag marked Erudition. This is 4 grams. Putting it in the transfer plate. And then putting it in the heated cup. Setting the timer for 3 minutes. Putting the leaves in. And then smelling. And what we're trying to do when we do this is make sure we have the right tea in there. And heat the tea leaves up. And she transfers the water to a kettle because this has a spout easier to control so you don't pour directly on the leaves. All right, and you set your timer for 3 minutes. And yours should look something like this. So you have a few leaves on top. I'd say you have about 30% on top and the rest on the bottom. Okay, so we were talking about craft versus standardized. the big factories also have an allowance so that they can make the following types of teas. So they make something called national grade. Who gets national grade? Do I get national grade? Not normally. If I get the national grade, it's by huge coincidence or a big accident. Then there's premier grade. Now we always get premier grade. And then there's grades 1, 2, and 3. So those 5 grades are the top 5 that receive extra attention. A lot of extra attention. 12 more steps of extra attention. What are these steps? I could go through all 12 at the same time, but let's categorize them actually for what they're trying to do. They're trying to aggregate the tea and then separate by look and pick the leaves. So what do I mean by look? You have to be beautiful in order to fit in one pile, and one pile you're not so beautiful, you go to that pile? In essence, the answer is yes. But let's define beautiful. If it's supposed to be a bud and a leaf, it can't be a bud and 2 leaves. National grade, every single leaf in there is a bud and a leaf, if that's what it was supposed to be. If it was supposed to be bud only, it's all buds, no exceptions. So they go through this process of separating. Winnow, sieve. At some point, as they aggregate, what happens to the tea leaves? They pick up some moisture. Oh, that's not good. We got to do something about that moisture. So they put them in a cloth bag. They create a gentle charcoal fire and then pull out that moisture and then go back through winnow and sieve. And they have all these different tools because they want to not damage the tea leaf. They're rolled in a specific way. They don't want to damage. So these tools are designed to be able to move the tea leaves around without damaging. They do a little bit more rolling in some cases. Get it refined. Get it at a higher level. Remember, this is the Kung Fu process, which is the craft process. All right, the timer went off. Tea master separates the tea leaves from the tea liquor. Not in a hurry, just making sure it gets done. So what do we end up with? We end up with this color. Gold, golden. When we look at from above, has a little tinge of red. What else do we end up with? Well, you're going to tell me ultimately what we end up with, but what I'm going to tell you is whatever it is, it's got a big aroma. Let's enter the quality arena. Let's find out where the astringency is on the mouth. Let's think about what aftertaste there is. And let's think about energetics. How am I feeling? Is my left foot all of a sudden frozen? Or my right ear all of a sudden hot? Energetics, how you're feeling, is by individual. And how you feel, you own. And that's acceptable. In general, red teas, in general, will make you feel warmer, but not necessarily all at the same degree, or not necessarily all in the same places. So let's go ahead and end it. 170-degree sip. I rolled it around in my mouth. I have a sense of the astringency, where it is, where it isn't. Oh yes, I'm getting a little aftertaste. Energetics usually takes a little bit longer, but I am sensing something. But let me take another sip. And on the second sip, I'm then beginning to pay attention to aroma and flavor.
What is the peak season of this tea or the vintage?
Spring. Spring, 这个是
是12号。
对，是哪一年的？RR
4月的
RE RE. Okay,
因为我
20.
限制的
Yeah, no, I know you moved that across. Yeah, 2021 spring between April 5th and April 12th. You know what? I was so distracted that I gotta take yet another sip. Okay, I know what I'm sensing about this tea. It's time for you to brew with the tea master. So again, continuing to make sure your tableau looks something like this. If you only have 2 cups, that's okay, not a problem. You're gonna make sure there's no soap stains. You're gonna heat using 200-degree water the cups. If you use 175, that's fine, 0 problem. The principle is just to make sure no soap stains and that the cups are heated. You're gonna make sure your timer says 3 minutes. You're gonna dissipate the steam. And in essence, reduce the heat a little bit. Make sure everything's absolutely clean. Then you're gonna draw the 175-degree water. Pour out the, in our case, the hotter water. And then put in the 175 and start to really go through this process of dissipating the steam and reducing the heat. Not in a hurry, you notice? It's not about how fast you can do this. It's really, when you think about it, the aesthetics of doing this. You don't see a bunch of water splashing around. You see a steady motion. You're gonna get your bag marked Erudition. And in a way, the trouble that we take with the brewing could be very accurately described, even though it's not a small cup. It's a brewful style, using brewful principles, refined principles of how to make the tea at the highest levels. You're going to add the leaves to the heated cup. Shake the cup because you're trying to warm all the leaves. And then put the water in the kettle because that's what you're going to use to direct it into the cup so that you don't pour directly on the tea leaves. Then you'll hit that 3 minute. So I just went through with you the principles of what they're trying to do in these 12 steps. And they're doing them repeatedly with better and better tools. What else are they trying to eliminate? Wrong color leaves. So if you have, after oxidation, leaves that are yellowish, oh no, you don't want those. If you have golden leaves for some of the teas, you don't want those either. Some of them, it's got to be all the black. Some, it's got to be within a range of goldish red up to the black. So each tea has its standard. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, geez, what if I were at the factory? Would they just give me those things that they're screening out? You know, I could live with that, especially if they give them to me for free. Answer is no. All of that stuff, once it's screened, then becomes a lower grade of tea, which goes in and is mixed with other lower grades of tea of the same varietal, of course, and then gotten ready for market. So it goes to grades 6 through 10. That's where that stuff goes, because everything in those top 5 grades, and I mean every exact thing in terms of the national grade, that thing is precise. No, it's not only the look, but it's the uniformity of everything, and truly leaf by leaf in a way regulated. When you get to Premier, there's great uniformity, but you can still have something sneak in there, but very little. So this gives you some sense at the real craft level what they're doing. So this is a craft level with a big producer who's gone through the big production, does tons of tea, and gets through those first 5 steps. And then for the grades 6 through 10, continues in a tons of tea packaging and sorting process. And then in the national grade through grades, you know, and I said that wrong, didn't I? 6 through 10. That's ridiculous. I can't count. It's grades 4 through 10. So you have national, premier, 1, 2, 3. And then you have 4 through 10. So that 4 through 10 is handled in a bulk way. Grades national through 3 is handled in a very individualistic way. And the price, if you can even get it, is reflected in how much work they have to put in. All right, your timer has gone off. Separating the tea from the tea liquor. And let's go ahead and enter the quality arena together. First, let's look at that color. Beautiful golden color. Let's look at these leaves. Yep, mine are pretty uniform. Let's go ahead and enter the quality arena.
One of the participants says the amber color of this tea liquor feels like sunshine on this foggy morning.
Love it. Sunshine on this foggy morning. That's how this particular participant characterizes the amber color, the beautiful amber color of this tea liquor.
Another participant says it seems the dry leaves are lighter in color than usual of red teas, or at least red teas that she's had. She can also smell some of its aroma in its dry state, and it smells fresh and bright and sweet.
Fresh, bright, and sweet in the dry state, addressing how the leaves smell. And then this particular participant is very sharp and probably is already drawing a comparison between how these leaves look and how, say, for example, Chimanito looks. Because remembering, I said it's in the Chimanito family. That was the basis that this particular participant used. And that's a fair and valid basis. This participant notes these are lighter than the Chimanito leaves. And that's absolutely true. The Chimanito leaves are uniformly black. These are lighter, as they should be.
Participant says it has the character of the scent is like an apple cider.
I love this. Character of the scent is an apple cider. Why do I love this? Because in China, frequently when they talk about Chimanito on excuse me, when they talk about Chiman red teas, frequently the term apple comes up in terms of aroma.
Another participant says the warm leaves have a dry fruit sweet aroma.
Dry fruit, sweet aroma of warm leaves. This participant comments, and absolutely, the magic of Chiman reds is that dried fruit. And where does that come from? It comes from that combination of how they roll the tea and then how they oxidize. They have a really, and the varietal. They have, for this particular varietal, over the years, discovered how to do this at such a high level that you get this result.
Another participant also experiences dry fruits, though for her it's like plum, and she observes that the wet leaves let her know right away it's a delicious red tea. And the first tea taste impression for her was of honey.
Ah, love this comment. First taste impression for this participant was of honey. If you had secretly asked me before we started into this discussion, I would have used the word honey as well. The apple for me comes later. The honey, especially that first taste and scent, that's the big flavor that comes for me. I also want to comment, what else did this participant say? It was a really good comment.
For her, the dried leaves had a plummy.
A plummy.
taste.
Yes, a plumminess of the dry leaf. So why do I like this comment? Well, plum is an apple. I understand that. But just like an apple isn't a nasturtium, all of us have different ways that we sense aroma. And so long as you don't say it's garlic, you're in balance. Because what I may perceive as an apple, and remember, excuse me, apples have a big range, don't they? You got tart apples, you got very sweet apples, you got the Fujis, you got everything. Plums also have a big range. So this is about, for some people, more apple, some more plum, but we're all talking really the same thing.
This participant also observes now, there's a lingering sweet aftertaste and it's smooth, very little astringency on the tip of the tongue, refreshing.
Smooth, refreshing, very little astringency on the tip of the tongue. There isn't very much astringency. There is some, but not very much. And yes, smooth and mellow is really characteristic of this tea.
And a lingering sweet aftertaste.
Lingering sweet aftertaste. I love that part of the comment too. Yeah, you leave this tea, or after you drink it and let it settle for a bit, it's like, wow, what sweet thing did I just eat?
Another participant says for her, it's a smooth, gentle, full mouth dryness.
Smooth, gentle,
Full
mouth dryness. So again, genomically, we're all different. So some have a little bit of drying, and I tend for this tea to fall in the little bit. Some still have that full dryness of mouth, and not an issue. Those are both accurate and good because we're different.
Participant says the flavor of the tea liquor veers a bit away from the scent in the sense that the scent was more like fresh hot apple cider, but the taste has a more complex dried fruit sweetness.
So there's a difference between the aroma and the taste for this particular participant. And it's a great observation because the taste for this participant leaves the aroma impression of apple cider and goes more towards a dried fruit taste. And I like this because there usually is in the fine teas a difference between initial aroma and what you end up tasting, especially as you get deeper in the cup. That is, there are several things at work here, aren't there? One is the temperature as it cools down, you get a different impression on your tongue. And therefore, what you first sense at the hottest that you are sensing the tea is going to be different. So you first sense the aroma at its hottest. And as it cools down, that tea taste becomes more complex. And this is an offshoot of temperature gradations, and it's also an offshoot of the fact that flavor and scent are very rarely in any tea 100% aligned. The scent is an invitation to you. It's an invitation to come on in. But once you come on in, the complexity of come on in is different from that initial invitation.
Another participant summarizes a lot of what's already been said, but in a little bit different way, that the warm leaves emitted a yeasty smell for her, and then she got tartness and sweetness of plum and sprinkles of spice like cinnamon.
Yeasty initial impression, a warmness, and more of that.
A little bit of tartness, and then back to the plumminess and some spiciness, which I think might come with the cider too, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Tartness, plumminess, and sweetness.
Another participant says, for her, this tea offers a very satisfying complexity that combines the sweetness of golden tonic and something else which she can't quite pinpoint, but also tasted with omnipresent, one of your other Sophie's teas.
This is a great comment because talks about the complexity and draws two other Sophie's teas as part of what this seems to combine. Golden tonic because of the sweetness, and then some aspect, which is not the floral aspect of omnipresent, but the underlying leaf taste of omnipresent, all together. And I really like this comment because this is all part and parcel of what this tea is. Okay. So, in summation, this tea is very drinkable, very comfortable, very approachable. You could invite somebody who's not used to drinking much tea over and serve them this, and they wouldn't be unhappy. They wouldn't understand the same way you do, but it would be a pleasant experience. Remember, these teas here out of Sophie's all are about the pleasant experience. Whether you are in the plum area or in the apple area or in the honey hive, it does not matter. It's a pleasant experience. It's mellow. It's smooth. And these are the things that Americans who aren't used to drinking this type of tea, they're blown away right away. And this is part of what's so special about these teas. And particularly all of the teas coming from that part of Anhui. Those teas, when they were being offered up to the emperor, were offered up as green teas. And it was already, they were already beloved at that time. Once the Chiman principles of processing took place, then this enhanced what these leaves had to offer. Yeah.
Why the name Erudition?
Erudition always suggests a deepness, doesn't it? Erudition, when you refer to a human that way, erudite, that means they know stuff. And not just a little stuff. They know stuff deeply. This tea reaches you deeply. This has complexity. So erudition is what came to mind right away.
Is there a type of food you would serve this with?
So in terms of food, obviously this could be served without food, but if you're in the afternoon and you're thinking, you know what, I'm a little hungry too, something like those Danish cookies, the butter cookies, would be great with this. And just a nice addition, a little something to be in your stomach, but it's not going to damage, and it actually will complement the flavor of this. All right, let's see how I'm doing, because I actually have a lot more to talk about today. All right, I'm going to take about 5 more minutes, and then I promise I'll come to a stop. Remember, I was talking about these choices that the farmers have. And you remember last week I was talking about top-down solutions versus bottom-up solutions to try and make life better in the rural areas. I want to talk to you about, from Anhui Province, a combination of a bottom-up, it really is a bottom-up solution to make life better in the rural areas. And what they're trying to do is put money into making it a good tourist destination. So what does that require? That requires good roads. So an overall infrastructure so you can get there. That's the first thing. So there's money that needs to be spent for that. But once you're there, you need demonstration farms. So how does Japan handle this? So I want to draw this contrast, because we were in Japan in April, and we saw how they try and make money in addition to just the growing of the tea. And one of them is to have these small shops near the tea fields, to have ability to do tastings, but to pay for it through the shops and make it a tourist experience. That's not appropriate for us, obviously, because we're not there as tourists. We're there as buyers. We're trying to make buying decisions, significant dollars and cents decisions. But in general, for the health of the village, this is one of the themes that's now beginning to come up. Put more of these demonstration farms out there. Pay the farmers more money. There's other ways that they're also trying to stimulate people to stay on the farm. And one is a form of subsidies. And we'll talk about that next week or the week after. All right, we've come to the end of Erudition today. Next week, we're going to do Cascade, which is a raw black. And the week following, we're going to do Forest Reserve, which is another raw black. So you're going to get a chance to see a couple different raw blacks that are very different. Yes. Oh, okay. One of the other things that I'd like you to think about is you had these reds over the last few weeks. Remember, at some point in October, as you're thinking about all these teas right now, we're going to do some blind teas. And so think about the qualities and make sure you're taking good notes so that when you do these blind teas, you can kind of refer back to things. The expectation isn't to get you to name the specific tea, but the expectation is clearly to make sure, oh yeah, this is a raw black. Oh yeah, this is a cliff tea. Oh yeah, this is a oolong, but not a cliff tea. Try and get you to that point. And you guys are essentially, all of you, I should say, are essentially there. Anyway, your responsibility this week is to stay healthy. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye-bye now.
There.